Hello everyone, hi. My name's Jade and we organise the Rise for Disability event. Bit of background about myself, I used to work in as a rep, doing product demonstrations for assistive tech and postural management products. That's kind of my background. We set up the company Rise and Made to Aid to help people source equipment, because I was going out doing assessments for a company that I was obviously meant to be selling for and telling them what they were looking at was wrong and they should buy this, which didn't go too well down with the company that I worked for. So basically give information and advice on the products and equipment and how to access it, and that's kind of what our background is as a company. So speaking to Jane, she asked if we would do this workshop to try and explain about the processes of ordering and things to identify when sourcing equipment for assistive tech for your client. So first of all, what we'll do is we'll go through the first step. So for low level, the first thing that obviously should be looked at is where is the client eating? If it's at a table, are they positioned in the right position? Risk assessment, are they able to chew and swallow safely? What's the substance, obviously, of the food that they're eating? I'd say environment's one of the main key things we probably have to look at. I will get Stephen to go through his protocol as well, because obviously he's got a lot of experience doing that, and you've actually done a spec sheet, haven't you? Or
I've created a protocol for independent eating assessments.
So
from the beginning point to virtually the end point.
So I'll pass you over to Stephen once we've gone through a couple of bits that Fortuna's got as well. So from my experience, first thing would be to do is to check where is the person eating. Do they have a sufficient table that they're sitting at? If they're in a wheelchair, can the wheelchair get to that table, underneath the table? Are they positioned correctly? Are they in an aligned position, or are they leaning to one side, for example? That will definitely be relevant if you're looking at arm supports, because if their weight's not neutrally positioned and they're leaning, then the arm support won't work as well. So we'll go through stages, talk about different pieces of equipment. So I will hand you over to Elaine to speak about the ornament range, is that right? Yeah, so we've got the ornament adapted cutlery and crockery range to talk about how that would work and how that could help somebody. And then we'll go on to arm supports, and then I'll pass you to talk about arm supports and then your protocol and go through it that way. Does that sound okay? Yeah, cool. Okay, I'll pass you over to Elaine. Introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, my name's Elaine Ferguson. I'm from Fortuna Mobility. As Jade was just explaining, we are exhibiting here today. I'm going to start with, obviously, as Jade was saying, it's very important for someone to be sitting in the right position with the right table. The first place to start is simply with the appropriate eating aids, cutlery and so on. I think we're all used to caring cups and basic cutlery. There's a lot more available now, and a lot more with modern technology has enabled lots of designs to come into the forefront, which are actually hidden. And the ornament range is a German range. A lot of time and investigation has gone into it. It's a melamine product. It's very, very durable. It's very light. But there are features about it which are quite hidden. So first of all the it's quite hard with the microphone as well, actually. I'll just show you. So essentially, the tableware is very attractive. It's quite modern. There are lots of hidden designs, but which enable better feeding and without assistance potentially. So first of all, this is clearly a cup, but it does come. If I can show you, it does come with a cone inside. So if somebody has any difficulty tipping their head backwards, this is a hidden feature within this cup. It looks like a standard cup. There are obviously other options with, that's actually very helpful, Seb, thank you, with two handles. And again, these are very light. There is also a thermal aspect, which is a choice in these. So there is a double layer to help keep the drink, or indeed some plates to keep food colder, keep food, drink even hotter. The lids, this has actually got a lid on it already. Now this is actually what's considered to be sort of a hidden lid. So it's not immediately obvious that there is a lid there. So it's something that can be quite discreet, that brings people together, enables people to eat independently for a lot longer. There are other lids and spouts, and all of these are interchangeable. Whatever your cup, you can use the same lids, which is great. There's none of this lid. I know even at home, if you've got Tupperware, you've got all the lids and none of the bases, but these are interchangeable within the whole range. This is really useful, and all bright colours. The colours we've got today are quite standard, but there are a lot of modern colours, a blackberry and a lime green. You know, they're just quite interesting and fashion-based colours. I'll leave that with you, Seb. This is, these cups here, these have got a non-slip feel, and we'll pass these round. They've got a non-slip feel, and these are all assisting. Obviously, this is for measuring, but also even with the positioning of the flowers, you can get a gauge of what people are actually drinking in one day. So again, there's a lot of intelligent features included in fairly standard cutlery, and you'll notice from here, this is about bringing everybody together to eat together in a fairly inclusive way, as much as possible.
In general, most of us assistive tech companies, we want to talk about the dining experience, and that's a really important thing to mention. If the person wants to be independently, to eat independently and not fed, then obviously that's one of the most important levels, is to obviously speak to your client, find out the importance of them wanting to be able to feed themselves. It will be more important to some than others, and that the microphone realised that will obviously massively benefit their health. So I've even got a friend that uses a V6 now, doesn't he, Jamie? He used to use a Bestic, I think, yeah. So he's gone up in the world to a V6. So he used to use a Bestic feeding device. Before that, he had to be fed. He's got 2 children and his wife at home, talking about the dining experience. And since he's had an assisted feeding device, he put on 1.5 stone, and his hospital admissions went to half. So it's so important. Because of him being able to eat, he wasn't waiting for his wife to feed him, and feel like he was obviously putting his children out to be fed and stuff. So yeah, emotional reasons is obviously one of the most important things.
And that includes, that includes the inclusion. So we want things to be as discreet as possible. This is a very good resource, this here. This is actually quite a good resource to take back to your teams, to take back to your colleagues. We've got some available, which you're very welcome to pick up. It goes through a lot of talking about what we're talking about here, which is about the inclusion, self-esteem, the ability to be independent with the hidden features, and intelligent design. So some of the plates here are, and dishes, and what you would expect, these are keep warm ones. There's also a break feature at the bottom. So they all come with a silicone base here to help prevent slipping, to assist with that. And this can obviously have hot water or cold water, and the bungs are easy. Also, this equipment is microwavable and dishwashable. So again, everything to make it standard and modern. And obviously we've got sloped dishes and no plate guards and stuff like this. We much prefer this, and some of them can even be more sloped than this. But again, with a bright design, a wide brim, just little things that make a big difference. In terms of cutlery, which again is a fairly standard, quite boring aspect to, I was just looking for the, you know, you've all seen this type of thing, to grip more easily, to bend. And again, for some people, this is the right thing. We have some cutlery here, which Debbie is showing. So as we were saying earlier, my glamorous assistant. This and this. And it goes by several names. So this is Seb, really. This is a knife which can be held like this. Now, this is a big step forward in terms of creating independence for people and not standing out within the group.
Are you okay for me to add something to this?
Please, please.
So with this cutlery as well, if you've got somebody, say if we've got somebody that's got limited grip, obviously that position will help. But say if they're unable to maintain that finger position because they've got tightening of the fingers, there's grip gloves available. So there's a company called Grippable. There is other ones available where it's got a strap that you can strap the fingers down to be able to hold it. Sorry? Active hand, yeah. It's called the grip. Oh no, it's not. The glove, active hands glove that you can put across, hold on, which is again a relatively low cost product, and a piece of adapted cutlery with a glove that obviously aids in grip and potentially a mobile arm support. You could have somebody that's eating independently with cutlery as well. So that's always an option to look at. So I won't point the knife at you. I'll pass that back.
Okay, and even to be independent, even this type of thing, which is a food preparation, just to cut an apple or whatever you need to do, peel an apple, whatever someone wants to do. This, again, used to be a death sentence, these things. This is much simpler. Someone has rather intelligently put this across here. But this aspect here can be just slip off and just be used independently without it or with it, and it's all dishwashable. And it's also got an again, the brake function at the bottom, and a nice anti-slip feel. So again, enabling people to be as independent as possible. Food preparation board, even if somebody wants to do things for themselves. Just very quickly, I'll carry on. In terms of the starting of assisted drinking, well, there's a couple of things. I'm sure you've all seen the hydrant, which is a basic piece of equipment that people are familiar with the siphon, it's at the end, and the bite valve. This is a new product for 2021. This is the Drink Up 21. This product is for people with much more limited movement. Whilst the hydrant does say it's hands-free, in reality you do have to pick this up and bring it to your mouth. There's no two ways, it's not hands-free. This is a very different product. It comes complete like this, with the bite valve. So it's sort of the principle of the bite valve and the tube are on this product, and this is completely movable. So someone even with very limited head movement can lean forward and use this, and we've actually just installed a couple of these quite recently. It's a new product. There was a previous version which didn't have it was a Drink Up Travel Light and the Drink Up Original. This has melded both of those together. So it's a litre bottle. It's got a multi-positional clamp that will go on to most things.
So this clamp can also fit on the side as well. So
Yeah. Just at the back here, you can see it could have another mount. But this will go on and enabling drinking independently, and also obviously discouraging dehydration as much as we can. So this is a very interesting product, and we do have some flyers on this back at the stand as well. And we also rent out this product. So if anybody wanted a trial on this product, that's available. Very easy, because this whole aspect here, the bite valve and the tube, can be purchased as a consumable pack for £7. So it's very easy to renew. They do last. There is a cleaning brush available, but it's a very simple product, but very effective. The product is about £82, £85.
How does the rental side work?
So we will rent out on a weekly basis, so you can extend that, and we have a rental rate which is available on our website, fortunamobility.com. We have a lot of rental equipment, and it can be rented out on a weekly basis. It comes back. The consumables are all removed. It goes through a decontamination cleaning process, and a new consumable pack is put on for the next rental. So it's a great way for people to see if it works, which generally you wouldn't be able to have.
Also, maybe for people from discharge from hospital, and it's more of a short period.
Rehabilitation, all sorts of things like that. Exactly. But for some people with very severe spinal injuries, it can be good to try out. The rental is a good way of trying out. Just running on from what Jade was saying about the importance of positioning and seating position, obviously an arm support can help with that. Anybody with any weakness in the arm at all, or who's going to fatigue easily. Seb, do you want to just explain to us what this is?
Well, this is an arm and zero gravity dynamic arm support. It might be quite good. Does anyone want to try this out? Or otherwise I'll be forced to get Elaine to...
Jodie said she would try it out.
Come on then, Jodie. Come on down. Come on down, Jodie. You've got to experience this. He who speaks first. Well done. We know you're there.
I'm just going to add, sorry, that's okay. So from an assessment process, the first thing you'd see is, has the person got trunk control, like core strength? It's not saying that if they haven't, it won't work, but we'd need to have some kind of postural management in place to keep them into a neutral position, because if they're heavily leaning to the left and their arm is their left arm, which probably will be weak, it'll be a lot harder for them to raise their arm. So we want to try and get the core supported to make sure that obviously the movement in the arms is less restricted. So making sure they're in a proper seat. A lot of people use them in a wheelchair, for example, so we'll know we'll already have the postural management element there, but we're looking at maybe like MND clients that are still strong on their legs and it's their arms, potentially like their core might start to become weak. So we would potentially then look at maybe some kind of support system. We've got the Bennett vacuum supports or the Stabilo that are like moulded inserts that are quite a relatively low cost product that you can use to keep somebody in alignment, which we'll go through on the seating assessment. But yeah, that's an option as well. So yeah, and also BAMBAC keeps alignment. So do you want to talk about that as well?
We're coming down to that bit.
We've got this fitted on a BAMBAC, but you can, as you say, put it on a wheelchair. You can clamp it to the table as well. So there's lots of options. Yeah, so that if you're not familiar with the BAMBAC, maybe I could ask you to step up for a second. So this was invented by an Australian OT many years ago, and basically she took kids horse riding and found that their neurological problems improved with that. What it does is essentially it's two things. It's very shaped from an AP point of view, and it's shaped from a lateralizing point of view. So people with lateralizing neurology, for instance, and that's more often kids rather than adults, use it from the lateralizing aspect. It's also used by people with either back problems or prophylaxis to prevent back problems. So we sell lots of these to dentists, and that's because of the shape here. So this tilts the pelvis. So if I put it all the way forward, your pelvis is tilted and you naturally come into a upright position. If you go all the way backwards, you tend to slouch, but it's more comfortable. There's a bigger area to sit on. So most people sit somewhere in the middle, but you can change the position. So it's used for back care. It's used for lateralizing neurology. In the context of that, and so in fact Jade suggested combining the two to us, and so in this context the manufacturers have provided this, which goes on the BAMBAC, but in fact in principle could go with any chair. And this point here, let's just dismantle it quickly.
There is also a table clamp as well, or a floor standing kit.
Yeah, it's a free floor standing kit. So this point here is critical because it all pivots around here. So put that on, and we put that on. And now my assistant
Another Debbie.
will try it out. So, sorry, what's his name? Chris. I'm going to start it like this. So if you put your arm in there and just completely relax, and you can see that his arm has sunk down because the uplift isn't sufficient to take the weight of the arm. So just come out for a second, and we're just going to put it at a high setting, and now it's lifting it right up there. If you want to put your hand down, you have to push it down because the uplift is much stronger.
If we were going to talk about feeding for this, because obviously that's what the workshop's about, this probably would be more of your desk activity. So this was set up for dentistry, wasn't it, for to reduce RSI?
Yeah. So if you were to,
that's what I was going to say. You'd be higher to make the anchor point. So obviously you won't be able to bring your hand to your mouth in that position, but if that was higher, the pivot point can change to help bring your hand to your mouth easier, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So now if you feel roughly, well, somewhere in the middle, your arm should be sort of just floating, and it's dynamic. It's dynamic zero gravity arm support. So unlike an ordinary arm support, it moves with your arm.
So,
And as Jade says, if you try and raise it to your hand, to your mouth, just about it, but it's not ideal. It probably should be 5 to 10 centimetres
and there's different
higher.
braces as well that can accommodate, so you can change the brace.
so this is all about us moving from minimal help to help with people to eat and feed independently through to the bigger support, plus the seating position, as Jade was saying, which the BAMBAC can can enable as well by creating quite a stable midline, good position for feeding.
It's a strange sensation, isn't it?
Yeah, it takes a bit of getting used to.
It just sort of feels like your arm's floating.
I meant more the seat there.
The seat.
Yeah. The arm, the arm definitely just feels so light.
Yeah. So anyone with any weakness or deterioration, these are designed for anything from MS to spinal cord injury to even shoulder problems, that type of thing. Okay, any questions?
Can I
Please.
clarify with the Activita then? It's not necessarily compatible with the Bamback chair, is it? You can have that separately?
You could, they're independent. These are two pieces of
It just
equipment,
happens to be
but
set
this
up as
has a fitting here for it.
So it will go on a powered wheelchair,
Dining room table?
dining room
Yes,
table, all sorts of combinations.
Clamp mechanism. So basically that's, sorry if I just take this off, it's for mobilisation as well, it's really easy to get off to an athletic. So I don't
And a standard set would come with a table clamp.
So that's the key point. That's
There's a table mount clamp that's got that same adjustable pin on.
There's a table clamp on our spec.
And yeah,
so-
Stephen
Yeah.
also provides this product as well.
Yeah.
It's got different suppliers of it, so he'll go through
I
it.
would, sorry, yes, go on.
If somebody was having their lunch in their rise and recliner chair,
Yes.
let's say, how would that be compatible?
well, you can buy a freestanding.
Okay,
So we have
A
that.
floor standing mount
Yeah.
as well, yeah.
Yeah.
And it can
And it
also go
has-
onto a height adjustable table as well if you haven't got
So that has a low profile base, has an upright, and then it has a horizontal. And at the end of the horizontal, it has the pin.
I would look at the rise and reclining position to, again, the positioning to make sure what angle they're sitting at. If they're sitting at a 90, it's fine, but if it's got a bit of tilt, their arm will naturally go back. So it's to make sure we can change the angle on it or not so much. I don't know, Stephen, with arms that probably more so a powered one at that point, would it?
The thing is, with eating, you don't really want to be tilted back too much anyway.
No. It's just I meant, for example, somebody was in a slight tilt and they were using this for something maybe wasn't eating related. Naturally gravity will take your arm back. So if it's assisting with that movement, your arm will be going back the way. So you'd need.
Well, I mean, I did an assessment and set one up on a cantilever table, and the guy was in a slightly tilted position in a riser recliner chair. And obviously, because the table and the actual arm support itself is kind of level surface, that's not a problem. It's, as long as the arm support itself is level, the chair can be slightly tilted. That won't necessarily affect the overall outcome.
I don't want to get too far away from feeding here, but I'm going to mention something else. If someone was in a riser recliner a lot of the time and eating in a riser recliner can actually be made, whereas the rake of a riser recliner is about 3 to 5 degrees normally. We can actually, if somebody had a dual motor riser recliner, and it was designed around their needs, the rake of that chair could be brought forward. So if you were making a chair from scratch, the rake of the chair could be almost in a negative degree angle. And as long as you've got the dual control, you can actually bring then back, obviously to prevent compression. But for eating, they could be, and if they need to be slightly forward, and some people do, that could, a riser recliner could be made that way. That's actually something that people don't think about and don't know about. It is a really, seating is the fundamental of where everything gets better, really. So I would recommend never ever underestimate what a chair can do and how it can be made and how it can help, even in that situation.
Just to talk a bit about some other alternatives to be a bit. I'm going to bring Stephen on in a second. The cost-effective side of things. So. I find a lot of clients potentially with if it's MND or if they've got like muscular dystrophy sort of in its shoulder position, they kind of bring their arm up and lean over. So again, sometimes being able to get the arm rested at a higher position with some kind of like fixed arm rest where they can angle with a spoon and adapted cutlery, as long as we don't want to get them to lean forward for the chewing, so it's to keep them in an aligned position. So again, looking at positional setup can sometimes help, and obviously we've all got background in that, including Stephen and obviously Fortuna and that, to advise on setup as well. So that's always something to look at. Just somebody's mentioned on here saying for the volunteer that was finding the Bamback a bit uncomfortable, they make the seat in several styles with spaces for male and shapes and different size pommels, postural and supportive seating. So that's
Well,
somebody online that's
excellent. Well, I would like to say that the Bamback size of the saddle can be, there are many different sizes and styles that can be made, but I would also say that the Bamback does take a bit like if all of us, unless there were any horse riders in the room, regular riders, if we were going to go on a horse ride now, we'd probably come back a little bit sore. So we always recommend that the Bamback is used, start to use it for even an hour or less in the first instance, and build it up each day. And
it's no
people,
different with assistive tech as well on the arm supports.
Absolutely.
Please don't put one on and leave it with somebody for 4 hours because they will feel so tired. It's all about building tolerance and gradually getting it up over time, because you don't want that negative. I'm sure Stephen's probably experienced that, where an arm support's been put in place, they use it straight away and then they become quite fatigued. It's all about building up that resilience and getting somebody used to using it, because obviously they've had no assistance for a long time. So yeah, that's definitely something to look at.
exactly, I think the point you're making, it's building resilience, but it's actually building muscle, strengthening muscle, strengthening the core.
It's reducing deterioration as well. So
Absolutely.
that's something to look at. It's slower in the process, so somebody's not been using their arms at all. It's making them still use what they've got, and it's slowing down the deterioration of muscle wastage as well. Are you okay for us to pass this?
Yeah, and just all of this equipment and what Stephen said, we're all about slowing down deterioration and building as much strength as we can.
Sure. I used to work for Stephen. I was his PA many years ago, so a lot of the initial stuff that I've learned and stuff has been from Stephen. So
That's all she knows.
yeah. Here you go. Thank you.
So, good morning, everyone. I'm Stephen Hill from Neater Solutions. Been with the company 20 years this year. So today I'm going to talk about various assistive technologies, but also interject with the sort of protocol that you guys could be using when you're thinking about independent eating for the clients that you see. We'll start off with just, while we're on arm supports, as Jade said, the Adero is something we do. We produce our own arm support. This is the Neater Arm Support Zero. It is a spring assist, still a dynamic arm support. Has adjustment in terms of the spring lift. I'm not going to ask anyone to volunteer because this is clamped to a rather weak table, which I had to borrow from my van. You can tell I'm a camper. But it has exactly the same principles. It's a friction-free arm device. Has a parking device here, has a docking device which can be used. It can clamp onto a table, you can go onto a wheelchair. Typically mobile arm supports are for people who want to eat independently with a muscular weakness. They're quite useful for motor neuron disease clients because they're not too high in the price bracket. However, with that sort of client group, they need to be aware, and it's something I always discuss with them, is that it's only as useful as their grip is useful. There are gripping aids available, as Jade mentioned earlier, but if their grip becomes compromised, it doesn't matter how well your arm gets up into the air. If you can't hold on to an item of cutlery, you're not going to be able to eat. That being said, it's all about choice. The choices for independent eating is to use different types of independent assistive technology. The Neutrator will come on to in a minute. But for some people, they want to be able to use their own physiology. So they want to be able to use their arms. The mobile arm supports also have the advantage of being slightly multifaceted in terms of eating is something that can be achieved with them, but you can also use them for picking up a cup to drink. You can use it for simple things like accessing computers, scratching your nose, applying makeup, adjusting your glasses. So there are advantages to mobile arm support technologies. However, there are, like everything, there's always a caveat. There's always something that could do. So it all depends upon the individual client. So moving on to what we're probably known for and how we started off, in fact, more than 30 years ago, which is for tremor and ataxia and how you can solve that particular problem. In terms of the thought process and protocols for assessing your clients, for tremor, so if we focus on tremor, if you want to save yourself an awful lot of time and save a visit to a client, this is something that you can do for them over the phone. And all you've got to do is ask them to, if I can find the right piece of paper, that piece of paper there. Hopefully they've got a piece of paper somewhere in the line. ask them to cut a 7 centimetre by 7 centimetre square in a piece of A4 paper. And their partner holds up, and the person with the tremor will hold on to a pen, and for a 20-second period, if that pen does not touch the side of the paper, then they're suitable for the sort of devices that Fortuna do with the assistive cutlery, or even some of the sort of self-leveling spoons, like the Guyano spoon or the liftware, which is fairly difficult to get hold of. But those sorts of technologies they'll be suitable for. So their tremor is of a frequency that sort of technology is suitable. So that saves you having to go out and see them and do lots of work. So you can do that literally over the phone, or if you want to do it via a video conference call, you can do it that way if you want to see the result yourself. The next thing you need to be thinking about in terms of independence is motivation. Yeah. And you've got to ask yourself a question. If you have done a client visit and you're doing an assessment and you've been talking to them about various challenges that person's got, if you see them and think, oh, do you know what, I think because of this they might have a problem with eating, that may not necessarily be the case. But if they say to you, do you know what, I'm really struggling to eat, then the thought process can start. Then you can start thinking the process of where do I go from here. But you also need to know about the motivation of the client. How strongly do they really want to do this themselves? Because sometimes someone will say, I've got a challenge with eating, but it doesn't necessarily mean they actually want to do it independently. They're just telling you that they've got a problem with eating. So if they're happy for their partner to feed them, then that's fine. Then stick with that. But if they turn around and say, do you know what, the guy I saw yesterday, I really hate, he's got MND, I hate being fed, and I'll get really, really upset not being able to feed myself, then the technology. Same with someone who's got a strong tremor. If the only option to get food into them and get this nutrition in is to have someone feed them, but their motivation is, well, do you know what, I don't want to do that. I want to be able to do this myself. So tremor reduction, where do we go from there? So there is, from the little test that I showed you earlier, you can see what level they're at. If they're above that level, so if they've got strong Parkinsonian tremor, MS with intention tremor, affectoid cerebral palsy, or any other tremor caused by any other neurological condition, ataxia, then unfortunately, the really only solution that you're going to be looking at is the Neutrator. We've been supplying this for over 30 years. It's been successful that length of time. How does it work? It has 2 chambers, one here and one here, which have got a fluid inside it, and that fluid absorbs the frequency of the tremor. So basically it stops the spoon from being uncontrolled. Now the other thing to do in the assessment is what you're finding now is the table that this is mounted to needs to be stable and secure, because if it's not, all you're going to be doing is transferring the tremor through the table, and it's going to be noisy and it's going to be off-putting. So a good solid table is required if you want to absorb a client's tremor. The advantage of this technology is that the spoon is in a controlled position and it always comes up and it will go to the same position every time. So you get consistency of position. Someone who's got a tremor, quite often when they're moving, they're not able to consistently get a spoon in the correct mouth position. The Neutrator will solve that problem. There's back stops and forward stops as standard. There's a counterbalance spring in here, so a client can actually get the food and they can actually let go of it. This one's coming up really fast because this is our new mini version. This is designed for sort of smaller people and children, but the standard version is slightly bigger than that. And on our stand, we've got the version which has got heavier damping. So you can adjust this to people with very strong tremors, to people with weaker tremors, and anything in between. So it's completely adaptable to a person's tremor. The reason why fluid is probably the best method of dealing with tremor reduction is its absorption technique is the fact it sort of sucks up the tremor, rather than if you use friction, you can try and use friction. You can use weighted. If you use weighted cuffs, for example, yeah, the problem with weighted cuffs are they may initially reduce the tremor, but the client's going to be absolutely fatigued by the time they're trying to finish the meal. So anything that adds weight to the person can be a bit of an issue. What this does is this just acts as a good anchor point. So it allows someone to anchor onto the arm, provided they've got a nice solid table, and they can easily scoop. You can see that the spoon goes down to scoop and lifts to level, so that's an improvement on design. And also a new feature on the design now is a parking sliding point where you can do that with that. That's it. So you can park the arm down, which means you can make it's easy for transport, but it also means it's out of the way. So rather than having the spoon up in the air, you can just transfer it down, and then you can just lift it up, and it's ready to go.
How much pressure will you apply on that?
If you're on the gentle, you can literally do it with a little finger. Yeah. Generally when someone's got a very strong tremor, ataxia, they've got a lot of power. So you don't get a strong tremor with a weakening situation. They will have a fairly strong muscular, and so they will hold on to the arm. But because we can adjust the resistance, it can adapt to exactly the requirement of the person who's using it and their physical. The other thing is there's also in the physics of it. If you hold the arm at the bottom, there's much more resistance than if you hold it closer to the spoon. So there's a natural ability to sort of change the amount of pressure. You can also wind down the counterbalance spring. So if that comes up really, really slow, then there's even less pressure required. So again, that's when it's starting to adapt to a weakening situation. There's various adaptations to the Neutrator has. There's adjustable handles. There's baseboard extensions. There's plate turners. As the product adapts to a weakening situation, you can use a sort of what we call module 3 type Neutrator with someone with motor neurone. But again, you've got to always be mindful that that particular condition is progressive. So they're going to get weaker. It's not going to. Muscular dystrophy, spinal muscular atrophy can, with use of an arm support, you can maintain a level of ability for quite some period of time. It doesn't build muscles, but what it does is it captures that moment in time and will continue that moment in time, provided they keep using it for a longer period of time. Unfortunately, with MND, because it's a progressive condition, they will become progressively weaker as time progresses, and there's nothing at the moment that anybody can do with that. So again, you can use a manual Neutrator with someone with that sort of degenerative condition. However, it might be better to think of other technologies for a longer term solution, which we'll move on to now. Slight interjection. With the Neutrator, you get a choice of cutlery and a choice of plates. That's our large plate. This is a plastic plate. In the corner, there's a soup bowl with soup spoon. It's sitting on our plate stand. I will show you. I will show you this because this may seem like the most bizarre thing to show, but we supply this with every Neutrator, and everybody without fail says, "What the heck's that? That's a strange plate. Why's it got a hole in the middle? I don't understand. Why's it got a hole?" It fulfills one function only. It is a plate stand, because all of our plates come with a peg or spigot because they go into the baseboard. So there's a hole in the baseboard. So if you're loading, especially if you've got soup, you don't want the soup falling off your plate. So it just does that. But that also means that you can stick that in a microwave. But it's basically for holding a plate or also for loading food on your plate. So if someone's got a very strong athetoid tremor or athetoid movements, what you can find with trying to use a manual Neutrator is they can't maintain a grip on the handle. You can use the active hand to maintain the grip on if you want to, but often that becomes even more of a challenge. They'll pull off the Velcro. So if you want to keep their hands out of the way, you can then move on to this technology. This is the V6 Robot. This is suitable for anybody who can get food from a level spoon. It's suitable for very athetoid cerebral palsy users. It's very commonly supplied to people with motor neurone. It's widely acceptable to the MS population. And the reason I say that, you've probably seen clients with multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is quite an unusual condition in terms of what its psychological profile. So often people with MS don't want anything that makes them look, quote, disabled. They will often, if they've got intention tremors, reject a Neutrator. Not because it doesn't work, but purely because they don't like the look of it. I've had people have 3-course meals in front of me, and they get to the end of it and say, yeah, I can see it does what it does, but I'm not having it on my dining room table. Interestingly, since we introduced this, they seem to accept that more. Don't know why. Maybe because they think it's smaller and more compact, but that's just an interjection. So in terms of your protocol, always think about your client's motivation and their psychological profile. Are they going to be accepting of technology? How do they feel about technology? That's always a good question to ask them. You know, if we're looking at technological interventions for independent eating, how do you feel about that? Good idea, show them a video, at least show them a video of any of these products, because then they can see other users using it, they can get a feel for what it's going to look like when you present it to them. If you go in cold, quite often you'll get a reaction, which you don't want, because you want to be able to solve their problem. So, V6 Robot. This is...
Asked a question.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. They've
Question.
asked if there is a rental option for the Neuterators. That's what someone's asked.
Okay, there is rental options on the robotic Neutrator.
Do you want to explain what they are?
There is a 6-month, we predominantly supply the rental for, generally only for cases like MND, mainly because of the short-term possible use of them. So we offer a 6-month and a 12-month rental on that product. So that is an option that is available, and is something that the MNDA are quite happy to help partially fund as well. We're in discussions with MNDA at the moment trying to increase the throughput of this sort of product to that particular client group.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's all right. No, it's all right. Sorry, I do, once I start talking, I do tend to just keep going. If you've got any questions at all, just stick your hand up. Just say, oh. So this is the V6 Robot, suitable for anyone who can take food from a level spoon. It can be operated in a number of different ways. You can use the app on, we call this a tablet. Yes, bright people are probably looking at it, reading the word Sony, going, that's a mobile phone. Yes, it is. It's a mobile phone. But we supply this, and the reason we supply this is because the app that we've created is massively aggressive, and we do not want anybody to go in beyond it. So it can't be used as a phone unless you know all the codes that we provided to do it. So we supply this, so you don't have to bother downloading an app onto your own phone. So you can operate it with the app on the tablet that we supply. The other options are any switch which has got a single jack connection. Often, quite a lot of the MND cases that I come across are what we refer to as flail arm variant. So they're able to walk around, but their arms are like this, so they can't. So we can supply foot switches. But big buddy buttons, any squeeze switches, blink switches, any sort of switch can interface. There are 3 ports on the back. You can have 1, 2 or 3 switch options. You can also use a Bluetooth enabled mouse. If you are lucky enough to have a power chair with an RNet facility, you can use a Bluetooth facility on your RNet. So basically you can use your drive control as a mouse to operate this. And we've even got it to integrate with eye gaze. Caveat on eye gaze, plate turning is clunky. It's nothing to do with us. It's to do with the interface between the grid pad, the grid itself, and our product, and the switching configuration of the midpoint. We've been speaking to the manufacturer. It's a BJ toy box. We've been speaking to the manufacturer. They don't seem to have a workaround. So, whereas on this product, if you're pressing either a switch or the screen or holding on to the mouse, I'll have to put the mouse on there so you can see it. So it rotates. With the eye gaze, you're literally just going a bit at a time. Just so you know. So you can operate it fairly easily, pressing scoop. You don't have to have a voice, but I have the voice for demonstration so you can see what it will do.
At your mouth.
And you can then, whilst you're waiting for that, you can rotate the plate to select your next meal. So the other thing it's capable of doing is
Scooping.
And if the food's a bit drippy, there's a little orange handkerchief sign comes up.
Wiping the spoon.
So you can wipe any excess. So if it's a yogurt or a gravy or a custard, you can wipe that before going to your mouth. You'll also notice that it pauses before going to the mouth. That's a safety facility to stop it from going like, here you go, it's your food. You don't want your food. Mouth position is very easy to set up. You can use these in beds and in a reclined position. So if you want to extend it out, it's menu. Mouth position.
Moving to your mouth.
That's its default position, and some people like that. But you can get hold of the arm.
By hand, move the spoon
And you
to the
can
best
stretch it out
position for your
as far
mouth.
as that. Hello.
Click to save.
How much is that?
How much is it?
Yeah.
To buy it's 5,300. 12-month rentals 2,700. 6-month rental 1,900. Only.
Has it got a clinical reasoning?
That's one of the things that we want to, Jane wants to obviously look at from low level to high level. Obviously these can be prescribed to somebody if the reasoning's there and the person wants it, and the things that Stephen's obviously mentioned.
Yeah.
So,
Mouth position.
yeah,
Saved here.
the funding's available for those that need and want it.
Moving
What we
to
don't want
rest.
is there is sometimes that you'll see something and then it'll get prescribed to somebody, be used for a period of time, and then it's of no use afterwards.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, what we tend to find, we've always found, is if you sort of understand the principle that the equipment service is a loan service, so it's a bit like a library. So all the equipment in the equipment service is able to be loaned out to a client, and a bit like a library book, someone will use it, and then they'll send it back to the library, and then it'll be used by the next person. So in terms of equipment of that level, the thing to think is the long term. You know, don't think of just that one client you're seeing. Even if it's a client with motor neuron, and you know they're only likely to be using it for 3 to 6 months. Yes, we do the rental option, so you could go for a 6-month rental, but then it goes back to us. You don't get the benefit of them being able to send it on to other clients.
could I ask a question that
Yep.
James actually said about as
Yep.
well? So there is some Neater electric, the previous versions
Yep.
in stores.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, from a cost-effective point, if there's a point-blank refusal, but there is still obviously purpose to reissue the older versions, isn't there, as well? So it's just
Yep.
to talk about the facility of that, and obviously see if they're available to use that. If they are, one thing I would say, if somebody's going to want to eat in more than one place, that is a clinical justification for that product, whereas the previous version's too large to take out. Yes, you and the
This comes in its own carry bag. You can take it with you, and often because of its size, people will take it to restaurants.
But
Yeah.
we need evidence that that person eats in more than one. So again, it's that emotional background of the client. If they're out a lot with their family and they want to eat out, and you personally know that, you can put that in your justification. It's more of a point. Let's not just say they do that to get them this one. If they're literally just eating in one place every day, and there is an electric one at home, and they've got their own particular table, there's no reason that they shouldn't be able to use the other one. But this is definitely developed further because people were wanting to eat out more and to different places, especially like a child with school, or if somebody has two homes, or if they go on holiday a lot. Like it's just too much faff to take the big one, isn't it?
I mean, the other thing about his predecessor is two things. One, we've discontinued it as a product. We discontinued it 3 years ago. We're still supporting in terms of spare parts and repairs, and we can refurbish on units which are younger than 7 years. What we're tending to do, because it's old technology and because we know the parts are eventually going to disappear, we do offer a trade-in discount. So we do offer £300 for the old unit against the price of the new unit. But we do refurbishments on all of our products, manual. So basically what we do is if there's one on the shelf, provided it's under 7 years old, it comes back to us, we strip it down, we completely rework it. It basically goes back to as new. We give you an extra year's, or in this case on that product, 2 years warranty, and then it's ready to go out, and that includes the setup visit as well.
What about the manual? Do you do the same thing for trading that if they've got the really old versions of the
Yes, we do. Yeah, I mean it's only £100 because obviously yes.
How heavy is that?
5 kilos. 5 kilos. Yeah, it's of a weight. It's interesting. We've got little screw holes to put clamps in. In the 3 years that we've been supplying this, I've never put clamps on it. Never needed to. It's solid enough to just sit there, and it's not too heavy. I've had people use them on the beanbag type lap trays. I mean, I tend not to recommend that because there's too much of a wobble, but you can do. So these will sit onto wheelchair trays. So one of the other clients groups that this is useful is your spinal injuries and your quadriplegics, because you can use head switch arrays. So you can use it for there's a much wider spread of clients. I mean, in terms of what the difference between this and its predecessor is massive. I mean, the predecessor was based upon this technology. All it can do is it can go in with its motors, it will scoop, and it will go to a mouth position. That's it. There's nothing else. There's nothing else more that it can do, and it uses one switch or two switches. Whereas this can wipe the spoon. You can use 1, 2, or 3 switches. You can use different switches. You can use the app. You've got multiple ways forward, and it will evolve. We're looking at voice recognition software, so you can basically talk to it and say feed me. So there's a lot of ongoing future proofing. Any other questions? Jade wanted me to show this because if a person's in a powered wheelchair and they've got a weakening condition like MND or muscular dystrophy or SMA, then the thing about the manual mobile arm supports is because they are a dynamic counterbalance system, it's always in lifting mode. So therefore the spring, or I think there's a spring or the hydraulics in the Adero, they're always lifting. So the person has to push down against it. So if they become weaker, then that's the other thing to consider. You know, if they become weaker over time, are they going to have enough strength to be able to push down against it? No, sorry, the arm supports. So I'm moving on to mobile arm supports now. I mean, yeah, I mean it's the same principle with that. I mean, if someone's going to weaken, this is why we tend not to supply manual Neutrators to people with motor neurone, because we know that they're likely to get weaker as time progresses, and it's much better to go in with the robot because it's just a much longer term solution. For clients that have got a progressive weakening condition, like a dystrophy, a SMA or motor neuron, they can have a powered mobile arm support. This is the powered Neater arm support. It's been available since 2004. Strange enough, it was originally designed for someone with motor neuron. by a remap engineer in Cambridge, because all of the mobile arm supports previously were either static, like the Oxford Centre Enablement type trough arm support, or they were dynamic spring assist counterbalance systems. So there was nothing else available. So the powered arm support came about. However, there seems to be a majority of cases, I don't know if it's the same with you guys, but certainly over the last 10 plus years, most of the cases that I see with motor neuron are on a flail arm variant. It's quite rare to see someone who has weakness from the legs and then it progresses up. Don't know why, just whether it's environmental or what it is, not too sure, but that seems to be the case. So they really wouldn't be suitable for a powered arm support. The reason for that is because they can walk around. Wheelchair services won't provide them with a wheelchair because they don't need one. So therefore it sort of defeats the object. You can put it on a stand, but as you can see, it's a big piece of kit, you know, and it's going to limit that client to one position. However, if they've got a powered wheelchair, sky's the limit. This can easily mount onto a powered wheelchair. It's operated by a button, like so. I'm going to drop the mic for a second because I can't use the mic and demonstrate this at the same time. It has the same, we have two options. We have the same sling type option that you have with the manual Neater arm support. Just drops in like so. Oh no, it doesn't. There you go. So it drops in like that, and then the person's arm goes into said trough. This is sort of fairly low down for an office chair. And the client, this is a left-handed model. So the difference between this and the manual arm support is that a motor drives the arms up and down. So it doesn't matter if they become weaker over time, because especially the down operation is operated by a switch. And the switch can be any switch, again, the single jack connection, so it could be a big buddy button, squeeze switch, blink switch. So the arm goes up and down, and that's what it does. And then once their arm's against gravity, all the other motion is to their ability. And it's amazing. I mean, you could see people that barely finger crawl across a wheelchair tray, and you think, oh, they're not going to be suitable for this. It's just not going to work. You get their arm into that, as soon as their arm's up against gravity, off they go. It's almost like a miracle. You put their arms in, like, oh, I can float. So anti-gravity is unfortunately it's not a good system. We have to live with it. It's not something we, if we didn't have gravity, we'd all float in the sea. But yeah, it is unfortunately for these people with muscular weakness, gravity is their worst enemy. But this at least allows them to be mobile. Because it goes onto the power chair, it means it's a go anywhere system. So they can use it indoors, and they can use it outdoors. So they can be arm mobile wherever they go. For clients I have supplied this with clients with motor neuron. We have the ability to add this module in, which is what we call an assist device. And what that does is, as the arm comes up, it would hit a ramp. The ramp's been taken off this one, and it basically tilts the arm across. And that tilting action brings the hand to the client's mouth, but holds it there. So they're not having to worry about trying to get a hand to their mouth. So it will hold the position, and then as they roll off the ramp, it rolls off the wheel, so that the wheel would just naturally hold it in place. And you can have that on one side or both sides. If they're I've got a client in Chelmsford who's got one of these. You can see how friction free is, and he's because of his head position, because his head's always falling forwards. He's in a very, very tilted position. So we have a little bracket which goes onto here, which allows the carriage that the arm goes onto to change position, level up. So you can have a level arm, even with a severely tilted position, you can have a level arm. So it still works as it should do. Because obviously if you didn't, the arm would go up like that, and then it would disappear into the background. So this is available predominantly for people with dystrophy, can be supplied with MND. We don't do rental on this, it's pretty much a custom made product. So the person who wants this, if they've got MND, is really going to be desperately to be using their own arms. But it's sometimes very difficult to justify. It's much easier to justify a robot than it is to try and justify this for someone with MND.
I think it's the stages as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think if they've got movement, obviously, you're facilitating the movement that they've got for longer. So with MND, if you can get them early enough, then you can actually keep some of their movement going on for longer and obviously reduce fatigue as quickly as it would happen. Personally, I've experienced that. I don't know whether you've found that as well, that if they're using their arms more, the deterioration's a bit slower than...
Oh yeah, I mean, it's the old adage, use it or lose it. There's still a certain amount of that around.
They'll know with things like the grip obviously goes first. And sorry,
Yeah.
have you got a question?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the attachments for the wheelchairs. Does it not affect?
Can I pass you the mic, because people have asked to hear the questions as well online.
With regards to the attachments for the wheelchairs, is there not issues with like the manufacturers of the wheelchairs and like the way the weight will change, or even like how you've got to use the electrics in the wheelchairs? I assume. Like, is it?
Tested. It's a very good question.
Depends on the supplier.
It's what we're calling at this moment a work in progress. It used to be back in 2008 or 2005 when we first developed the product. We developed this product in conjunction with the wheelchair manufacturers, predominantly Invacare and Sunrise, because they were the two biggest suppliers of wheelchairs in this country, and probably still are. So we got written approval from both those companies, and we thought that's fine. That's absolutely no problem at all. As time has progressed, however, things have become slightly more challenging. So Invacare, for example, and I'm quite happy to be honest about this, Invacare, for example, do not like the companies putting anything to the XLR socket on the controller. There's no evidence that our system over the 17 years that we've been supplied it has ever caused a controller to blow, but that's not relevant to them. Well, you've got two options. You can either hardwire it. We're not electricians. We can supply a control box to hardwire it directly into the batteries. The really weird thing about that control box is not designed to protect the wheelchair at all. It's designed to protect our device, because we've already got protection in our device for the wheelchair, because we put a resettable fuse in our XLR. But if we tap in directly into the batteries, if someone charges up their chair and has that connected at the same time, our electronics will blow. So we have to put a protection circuit in there. The other option is a battery pack. We're working on a lithium-ion battery pack at the moment. We do have a lead-acid battery pack. The lead-acid battery pack at the moment is heavy. It's quite difficult to fit, but it can be done. So that's
What about with the mounting side of it? It's not too much, as long as you're not putting any kind of hold or anything.
Right. On the mounting side, because we use a strap bracket system, and basically it's a non-invasive system. We've been using it for 17 years. We've carried out tilt tests. So the current chairs have not changed in weight over time. It has to go onto a power chair. The only manual chair this could go onto, I think, is a Netty, because it's a big steel frame chair. But even so, it needs the battery pack. But the advantage of that is normally the foot plate, you can actually tag the battery pack onto the foot plate, so that completely counterbalances the weight of the unit behind.
If you've got a manual chair, the likeliness is that it'd probably be
Yeah, you'd be better. You're unlikely to have a powered arm support on a manual chair.
Unless it's attendant, but then that would probably still be weighted because it'd have a battery pack at the back of it anyway.
So I mean, the other thing is that the wheelchair technology is advancing. So, for example, Sunrise, I've got the Q series, Q500. The Quickie and the Java, perfectly simple. Even with the Sedeo back, we found a way, in conjunction with them, to find a way of fitting. Q500 is a bit of a challenge, because they've now changed the seat rail. There's nothing on the back we can fit to whatsoever, because we always generally fit onto the seat back and brace off on that.
Talking about wheelchairs as well, I'd just like to mention about like the funding process and funding routes as well. So if you're having to have a bespoke mounting system for a wheelchair, there is sometimes, I don't know so much about Kent, but that you can justify the cost of the mount and the fitting through wheelchair services if it's an adaptation to their wheelchair to allow them to drive it, for example. So manual device sometimes can be justified to be able to drive a powered chair, secondary to an assistive feeding device, for example. So you've got separate justifications. So certain parts can be joint funded, and that's kind of what different counties or across the UK are looking at joint funding. So obviously all of these devices to some extent can sometimes be justified as a health need, obviously for hydration and nutrition, but also the social aspect to it that can be funded, as well as the wheelchair service for the mounting. So sometimes if something is quite expensive, can look into trying to get funding from different avenues to get it funded for the client as well, and not all put through one funding channel. Obviously smaller devices would be a matter of signposting unless there is similar items available on the NRS catalogue, for example, so they can be funded that way. So just to, have you got anything else on funding routes, because you know quite a bit around that, because it'd be quite good to talk about.
Yeah, we're funding, obviously, because I've been doing this 20 years, funding has changed over those 20 years. There's been various situations. There's ISIS and SCES and PIPs and personal plans. There's all sorts of different variants, and every council got his own way of doing it. Funding has been probably more challenging since 2014 than it's ever been. 2015, it sort of became easier because the Care Act directed it to be. But in my experience in the last 3 years, councils seem to be finding ways of not necessarily going with the Care Act in that respect. But in terms of funding, the options are generally, if a community occupational therapist is involved in an assessment process with someone like myself, and the technology works for the client, quotation is provided, then you put that quote to your panel, and the panel will either go yes or no. So, but if for some reason your local authority funding is not playing ball, then the option you've got is going to your clinical commissioning groups. Why do I know this? Quite a few years ago, a therapist in Liverpool, Alderhay Children's Hospital, wanted to find out, her funds were starting to run out. She wanted to find out, where can I go to get funding for these mobile arm supports she was looking at. So she went to NHS England. NHS England have got a budget for assistive technology. Sadly, not this type of assistive technology. They've got budget for communication aids, environmental controllers. Not a lot of people know that, but that's another angle you can tap into. So you can get funding for telecommunications, computers, environmental controllers from NHS England if your local authority hasn't got that fund. So you can tap into that. But I know you guys have got your own assistive tech place in Ashford. Is it still there? The station house at Ashford? Yeah. Is it Canterbury? Is it? Yeah. But for a local authority, sorry, go back to the story. So she went to NHS England. NHS England went, not us. Try your CCG. CCG went, no, it's not us. Go back to NHS England. And it batted backwards and forwards for about 3 or 4 months. And eventually, the clinical commission group said, actually, you're right, it is us. Big surprise. Because the Care Act is client-centred. And that's what the clinical commissioning groups are to be. And their main reason is to keep people out of hospital. So in terms of independent eating, and this is, I suppose, it's a very, very strange thing. Independent eating is the lowest common denominator in terms of equipment provision in this country. The World Health Organization did a massive study to find out about assistive technology. Independent eating isn't even on the list. DLF in Manchester has got a brand new website with all sorts of technologies, moving and handling, beds, seating, posture control. Is there a section for independent eating? No. Why is this? Don't know. Everyone has to eat. If you eat, you stay healthy. If you stay healthy, you stay out of hospital. Hospital admissions cost a fortune, and yet independent eating doesn't seem to be thought as an important aspect.
James' case as an example to that, obviously, he's 6 foot, weighed, I think he weighed 6.5 stone, and now he put a stone and a half on in a year. He weighs about 9.5, 10 stone now, and goes out for dinner, eats like a normal, eats like a standard size portion, like a really big portion of steak and chips, eats the whole lot and don't feel guilty. And it was all done as guilt because he didn't want his wife to feed him. So it's just having that conversation with people and finding out their needs and their wants.
Yeah. But you often find with clients is that if they're struggling, if they've got a challenge with eating, they won't because it's too challenging. It's too much of an effort.
Time and effort.
Too much effort.
As well,
Yeah. So they'll eat, or they'll eat things that are easy, crisps, maybe sandwiches. Yeah. Not very good healthy food. So so their health deteriorates. They end up in hospital, and then the cycle continues. So if you can get, during the pandemic, I was fortunate, I suppose fortunate or unfortunate, to be out and to still be able to do joint visits. In the beginning, because of level 1 from the NHS, the letter that came out to all the authorities, it was very limited to very, very extreme cases. And one of those extremes was anybody who was in danger of malnutrition. So that's why I was doing it. And obviously, as time progressed, level 2 came in, level 3 came in. But
I know we have obviously, we've run over a little bit, but
Yep.
there was a couple of other points that Jane asked me to mention about, obviously, when we're looking at setup and for the individual for feeding devices, if we've got somebody that is chair-bound in a chair and they're having their food placed on a feeding device, we would potentially, what sort of solutions do we have from that? So basically, we're talking about carers and obviously the cost of the carers coming in and doing stuff, because obviously, I think that obviously you wouldn't reduce, because it's always single care in Kent, I think, so from that side of it, but you can reduce the time amount from their care package, for example. So they could be out, they would have to prep the food, bring the food, but then the person could eat independently, but they could go and do other things like obviously cleaning, make the bed, do that kind of other sides of stuff as well. If they can eat, so that's another thing that I'd look at on an assessment. How long does it take this person to eat with a device and with the carer? So from a justification, so for example, if you've got somebody that's taking 30 minutes to be spoon-fed, is that the same time frame for them to eat themselves? If they go over it, there may be a situation where the food's going to be left cold next to them, which I know that has been a problem with you guys in the county. That's what Jane said to me. So also looking at setup, what movement do they have? Is there any way, do you have like a powered table that's remote controlled that could move it out of the way? Is there anything like that? Because I think that would be quite a cool solution if you had a height adjustable table that could move.
Not that I know of at the moment.
There you go, we'll invent one because that might help.
But
So for example, if there was like a height adjustable table that had some kind of remote control device where it could be moved out of their position, out of eye view, that might be an option. There is ones that have swivel, so there is a table that the Bestic feeding device has. I can't remember what it's called for the life of me. It's got a clamp and it's got a mount that you can swivel.
Swivelly tabley thing.
It's swivelly tabley thing. But it's a I can't remember it. I will share the information once I find it. But it's a table that can be, if they've got like movement in their arm, they could potentially move it out so it swivels out the way. So a flip out table.
There is a table that I've seen mounted underneath the framework of a riser recliner chair. I think it's a brown, and that I've seen a couple of those there where the client can just push it out of the way. It's on a post upstand, and you can just move the thing away and then bring it.
So that might be an option. So it's all these little things to look at and identify, because we don't want, obviously, you just go through all the trouble of getting one of these funded for someone and then them use it for a few days and go, oh, I've been sitting with my cold food in front of me all day, I don't want it anymore, sort of thing. Like it's just, yeah, it's trying to look at these problems to find solutions from it as well. And also, obviously, the powered drinker for liquids, depending on their chewing and swallowing ability. I would maybe mention a bit about that.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we do obviously as well as eating, we do drinking. So we've got the Neater drinker, which is a long straw in a cup or on a bendable frame, very much like the drink cup. Those manual technologies have got non-return valves. So once the fluid is at the client's mouth, it gets captured there, and then all they've got to do is sip up the ball-bearing valve. But if they've got polyp closure or lack of sucking ability, then we do have a power drinker, which is a switch-operated system.
And the powered drinker can do
Yeah, you can do
somebody
pureed
that
food.
is on solely on pureed foods, that might be a better option for them. Again, because you can position the food, and or if it's in a cup, for example, and the powered drinker to the left hand or the right hand side if they're in a rise and recliner chair, and then position the mouthpiece so that it's just a mouthpiece that's in front of them in theory, isn't it, rather than a whole device. So if they're solely on pureed foods, that might be an option as well. And the powered drink is quite good for using in bed as well to keep people obviously hydrated and nutritional.
And,
If they're
yeah,
on
and that
Complan
as well
or
for
some
heat,
kind
yeah.
of like feeding things, they can take that themselves at their own leisure as well. So it's worth looking at.
So just to sort of finalise, but sort of based on what Jane was saying about in terms of carers and time, I suppose we were fortunate enough in 2011 to have a study. It wasn't in this country; it was carried out in Denmark. But there was a number of conclusions. I won't bore you with all of them, but the two key conclusions were using technology saves 16 minutes and 44 seconds. Don't know how they came up with that figure per meal. So there is that time saving. But more importantly, occupational therapists' role in the overall success outcome was imperative. It was important for them to follow up and see the client. It's quite. I know. It's very tricky. There's staffing issues and all sorts of other things, and especially with the pandemic as well. That your time is limited, but it is. If you do provide a piece of assistive technology, please do follow it up with the client, because sometimes the client may not be using it right. You'll get, if you just gave it to them, even if someone like myself set it up and left it with them, something goes slightly awry, they'll more than likely go, all right. They'll just go, yeah, no, I'm not using that. And they'll just put it to one side. And then you've got to then collect it, and then it goes back into stores. And then the next time you try and justify that piece of equipment, they say, well, last client, they only had it for 3 weeks. They didn't like it. We can't deal with psychological aspects of the client. Yeah, that's something that none of you can deal with. If the client, for some reason, decides after week 3, I don't like this anymore, that's not something you can deal with, not something we can deal with. But if it was just purely because something went a little bit wrong, there was a setting that wasn't quite right, if you go out and do the follow-up, you will notice that, you'll get that sort of feedback, then you can feed that back to us and we can resolve it. And then hopefully, we can work with you to get that sorted. I mean, in terms of, again, just finalising with the care thing. So if you think you've saved 16 minutes and 44 seconds, standard warranty on a Neater or even a Robotic is 3 years. So it's a 3-year warranty. So a carer, the average carer cost is £11,000 a year. So a carer over 3 years is £33,000. So if you divide £33,000 and take 16 minutes, potentially 365 days a year, 3 days, three times a day, 365 days a year. Even if they've got one, even if they have one meal a day with a robot, it's still significantly less than a carer. Sorry. Please clap Zeb as well, because he's patiently sat there while I waffled on.
If anyone's got any questions or scenarios or clients or anything like that they can give over, that I've got 5 minutes till I've got another one to record. So if anyone's got anything they want to ask, or by all means, I'll leave with Ian to film the other one, and you can try the equipment and come and have a little look, because you're all right to stay here for a minute, aren't you? These guys want to come and ask some questions, yeah? Has anyone got anything they want to ask?
There's just a really vague question, really.
Sure.
Well, not vague, but do we go to I'd like to see this videos with clients. Is it on your website?
Yeah, neater.co.uk. All of that.
And I'd just like to add something even better with that. The link to our event has got virtual stands on there as well. So, for example, it's got the products with the links on there with their website linked. So if you want to see it in a kind of setup, that's what we're looking at, trying to give more of a virtual representation with companies, so that if they're at home, you can go to our exhibition hall and show them different products that you've seen here today virtually. So we've got like a whole virtual exhibition hall as well, which will send you the link. It's accessible for 30 days, but then the exhibition hall's all year that you can see as well. So yeah, gives information on that as well. I'll leave you to it. I'm going to take a short break on this